The next chapter in the Monsterverse, Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, comes out in April. Wait, now it's March again. Ugh, they keep changing the release. Anyway, to celebrate, we're going through every film in the Monsterverse. Today's episode is all about Monarch. In the first ever live action TV show to feature Godzilla, it's time to look at Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, here on the Atomic Lizards podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Atomic Lizards. We're a trio of friends podcasting about the Godzilla franchise and other films we love. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udi, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the Kaiju extraordinaire.
And on today's episode of Kaiju Korner, we are covering the Apple TV Plus show Monarch, Legacy of Monsters.
Monarch Legacy of Monsters follows Kate and Kintaro, two improbable siblings who set out to uncover the truth behind their missing father. Their investigation points them towards the mysterious zoological organization Monarch. They must work together and form some unlikely allies to not only find their father, but to also unearth Monarch's hidden past and learn what links their family's legacy to the cryptic organization.
Monarch Legacy of Monsters is a 2023 television show produced exclusively for Apple TV Plus. The show was developed by Chris Black and Matt Fraction. It stars the talents of Anna Saiway, Kiersey Clemens, Ren Watabe, Joe Tippett, Wyatt and Kurt Russell, Mari Yamamoto, Mirelli Taylor, Anders Holm, and Takahiro Hira.
This episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't. Now let's get started. What are you guys' initial thoughts? Udi, do you want to start us off?
Sure, why not? I'll keep it nice and brief. I feel very mixed on this show, but more negative on this show. Which is really unfortunate because I was actually really looking forward to watching this. And I hadn't watched a single trailer. I knew literally nothing about it except for the fact that it had to deal with Monarch and learning more about the origins of the organization and things like that. But just it I just feel like it went back retroactively too much to try to change things or connect things that didn't really need to be done, and just in every possible went in every possible direction that I wouldn't have wanted. Like it uncovered things that I didn't care about. It had characters I didn't care too much about either, and I just feel like it told the least interesting story possible given the premise of the show. But not trying to be too negative about it either. Like, it was enjoyable enough. Like, I didn't hate it. I wasn't bored out of my mind watching it, but I just feel like none of it quite hit with me, which is unfortunate. There was like one moment that I was like, all right, that was pretty nice, I guess. But in a 10 episode show that's, I don't know, somewhere like around 8 to 9 hours, that's not fantastic.
Was
But
this moment during the last episode just
it
out of
was, yeah.
curiosity? Oh, okay, I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about then.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
good moment, but everything else I
Yeah,
was
that
like,
was
eh.
awesome, but yeah.
Well, okay, maybe we're talking about different moments, but I guess there is two moments, I guess.
Oh, okay. Because I'm
But
thinking of a moment, but yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
we'll get there. But I guess two moments then. The final episode is by far and large my favorite episode of the show. But yeah. All right. So I will pass it to you, Miranda. What do you think of the show?
It's a mediocre television show. I mean, there's not much in the show for it being 10 hours. I feel like they could have done way more stuff with it. Um, I found the characters to be annoying at times. The whole middle plot of the season felt kind of pointless. Um, there's some interesting story elements and concepts in this. There's like the messed up timelines being out of sync of your original timeline, of like that type of nonsense is interesting. And I liked anytime they were in the past, from like the 45 or 55 all the way up to like the 60s. I really wish they spent more time developing that storyline so we could see Kay and Shaw and Bill's relationship and how much work they just spent to try to establish Monarch. But instead, we kind of get this 2015 story that is okay. There's some interesting stuff, but like I'm just more drawn to the past stuff than I am to the quote unquote present day, even though it's technically 2015. So, yeah, overall interesting for being like the first Godzilla television show I've ever watched. Um, I wasn't really expecting anything too much out of it. Um, and it's more of a Monarch show than a Godzilla show. But I'm gonna pass it to Dan now. What are your thoughts?
All right. So I thought this show was adequate. It was all right. I didn't think it was the absolute worst thing in the world, but it really didn't grab me as much as I would have liked it to. Because, like, when this show was first announced, I was super excited for it because, well, first of all, it's more Godzilla content. I'm always going to be excited for more Godzilla content. But once again, the MonsterVerse is starting to reach points in the franchise that I never thought it would reach. Like, never did I think we would get a spin-off TV show that focuses on Monarch. Like, that's awesome. So I was like really excited for this show. And then when it was coming out, it was getting like really good reviews. It had like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes at one point. So I was like, "Oh my god, this is like I'm so hyped for this." And like the first episode definitely grabbed me, and so did the second episode. I remember when those first two episodes were over, I was like, "Oh man, I wanna watch more. I can't wait to watch more." And I will say that I
I
was oh, what's up?
I agree. The first
Yeah,
two episodes really get you invested and hook you into the story. And then
yeah,
from there, not so much.
I
yeah.
can't believe this show had a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes at any point.
Yeah,
It
that's
did.
crazy.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, so but yeah, so like the first two episodes really did grab me, and like I was really excited to watch more. And to be fair, with every like new episode that was coming out, I was always looking forward to the next one. But yeah, like after those first two episodes, and as soon as you get to like the midpoint of the show, it does kind of falter a little bit, because I agree with Miranda. I don't think that our present day characters, Kate and Kentaro and then May, I don't think they're strong characters. I definitely found Lee, Kaiko, and or Kiko and young Bill Randa to be the more engrossing characters for me. And personally, this is just how I feel, but I seriously think that Kurt Russell should have been the lead for this show. But instead, he's more of like a huge side character that we come into later into the episode. The leads are Kentaro and Kate, and I kind of agree with you guys. I don't think that they were strong enough to really carry this show for me. But yeah, I there were some moments to the show that I did really like. I love the world building aspects. I I loved every moment that Godzilla or any other Titan showed up. That was definitely the highlight. The last episode was great. I was just mentioning earlier with when Udi was giving his thoughts. There's a moment during the last episode that is probably my favorite moment of the entire show. You guys probably know which one. It was awesome. We'll talk about more about that later. But yeah, other than like a few shining moments here and there and a few like moments that I thought were, pretty neat, or they definitely did help add to like the background of Monarch and the background of the Monsterverse. Miranda, I think you had, was it you, Miranda, or you, Udi, that said that they were going in and like changing things about the timeline?
That was me.
Okay, yeah, Udi, you had said they were changing things about the timeline, and yeah, that's why, because I had mentioned in our previous episode of Kong Skull Island that they kind of go in and like contradict certain things. So like, that was definitely an issue
Like
for me.
what? Because I
Well,
didn't pick up on any of that.
we'll get into that discussion when we
Oh, okay, okay.
get deeper into this. But yeah, but my overall brief thoughts, I thought the show was okay. I didn't think it was amazing. It definitely falters near the middle of the season, but I don't know. I just feel like it could have been way worse. And like yeah.
Yeah, it probably could have been worse.
Yeah. Like I feel the
Um,
characters could have been done way worse, but yeah, this show
yeah.
it was okay. Those are my thoughts.
I feel like it could have been way worse, but it also could have been a lot better.
Oh no, it
Yeah.
it, it could have been. Yeah, it you're 100% correct in that.
And it's unfortunate because I do feel like the talent was here and like the budget was here. It's just like I said, like I feel like every decision that was made, I was just kind of puzzled at like why is this where we're going or why is that where that character is going or yada yada yada. I was like this it's almost frustrating. It's like all the pieces were there and it just didn't work. The cake didn't bake. It just stayed in like a
Someone
bunch of
forgot the
chunky
baking
liquids.
powder
Yes.
or soda.
Yeah,
But everything else except that, can't your cake won't rise if you don't have those.
exactly. Thank you for helping me with my analogy, Miranda.
Mhm. So I think that might be a good point for us to transition into some questions, more in-depth analysis of this television show, streaming show, whichever it may be. So let's start off with how did you guys feel about the human characters and the story? Is it stronger or weaker than what we usually get in the MonsterVerse? I know we've kind of already touched on it, but let's expand a bit.
Yeah, and I kind of already got into this with my brief thoughts, which didn't mean to do, but oh well. But yeah, I definitely like I had just said, these characters, at least Kentaro and Kate are two quote unquote leads. I did not think they were that great of characters. Like Kentaro actually kind of annoyed me at times. Like he would just go and do things that just it's like why? Like why are you doing this? Like one episode I can think of is when they're in Alaska and they're all lost in like that frozen wasteland, and then Kentaro
Episode annoyed me.
yeah, and then Kentaro just decides, you know what, I'm gonna go off by myself. It's like, why? You are going to die if you go off by yourself. It's just like, ugh. So yeah, see, like things like that just kind of annoyed me with this character, and then like they tried to build some like intrigue, I guess, with May's character. And like her character was all right. I mean, I found her a little more interesting than I did Kate and Kentaro because like they went out of their way to make her character seem a little more mysterious than them. But in the end, I mean, the payoff wasn't that amazing, if you ask me.
Yeah, I feel like there's a scene in the TV show where they're like looking at a monitor and it's like the person May worked for is like her boss. It's his office or whatever, and they like linger on some logo. I'm like, am I supposed to know what this is or
Yeah,
no?
that's Apex.
Okay, I don't know who they are.
Yeah, they're the ones that. Wait, have you've seen Godzilla versus Kong, right, Miranda?
Yes,
They're the
like
ones
a
that.
year ago, 2
Okay,
years
well,
ago.
they're the ones that made Mechagodzilla. They're the ones responsible for Mechagodzilla
Okay, that would have been
in
good
GBK.
information to know beforehand.
Well, I will admit, when that reveal happened, I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, "Oh, hey, it's Apex! Like that's cool."
I thought it was kind of cool, but also I was like, okay. Like I was like I guess I know where this is going because Apex ended up doing Mechagodzilla and it's like oh okay that's how that ended up happening probably like they got together and worked together probably to develop that technology or whatever but at the same time I was like I mean it's a fun little nod but other than that it means nothing to me.
So I will say, in regards to like the human characters slash story that we usually get in the MonsterVerse, I mean, this isn't saying much because the MonsterVerse has never been strong when it comes to its human story or characters, but I do feel this was a better story than what we usually get. I was slightly invested in it. It wasn't something that was keeping me on the edge of my seat where it's like, "Oh my god, I got to know what happens next," you know. It wasn't anything that amazing, but like I hate to keep beating on Godzilla 2014, but its human characters other than Joe Brody were just so boring. So like I thought these characters were better than Godzilla 2014's characters. And I did feel that the writing, even though it kind of faltered at times and was kind of dumb at times, it was better than the writing in like King of the Monsters. But like you guys were saying, for 10 hours, the writing and characters just couldn't handle the weight of a 10-hour long show.
Yeah.
So, like, I do think that these characters are stronger than what we usually get, but that's also not saying much in regard to the Monsterverse.
Yeah, I think they had some really interesting characters with young Shaw, Kay, and Bill. I wish they would have spent more time with that because, like, Kentaro and Kate and May, interesting at first, but they got a little whiny and complainy and annoying, which I don't particularly like watching if it's not done well. It reminds me of whatever Harry Potter movie where all he does is complain and cry the whole time. I'm like, okay, this is whiny. I don't want to watch this. Um, but I think they intertwined the two time periods back and forth in an interesting way. Even though the characters could be whiny or some characters are more interesting than other, they all tie into like a cohesive story that kind of explains where everyone is at, um, and the reactions to the events that happen throughout the season, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I I think I agree with what I believe you said, Dan, where you felt like Kurt and Wyatt Russell's character should have been like the main character. I feel like that would have been a much more streamlined and I think just by default just more focused and probably better story. I also feel like the show in general could have been like 6 episodes and actually would have been better off for it. Um, but yeah, I mean, the main trio, I wanted to like them, and in moments like it was like they were fine, but yeah, I agree with what you guys have been saying. Like they would get annoying, or like one moment Kate would be mad, and then Kintaro would be like, "Why are you mad, bro?" And then like the next moment, all of a sudden they're flipped, and Kate's like, "Why are you mad, bro?" And Kintaro's like, "I'm mad." And then May's just there like, "Oh, blah, 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 you guys are annoying." And then all of a sudden, just like her whole family drama thing happens, and then she's getting mad all the time now, which like some of it was understandable. Like in Alaska, it's like she fell in the water, blah blah blah. Like okay, I
She
get
was
it. Like
gonna
you're
die,
yeah, you're
basically.
gonna die.
They were not prepared for Alaska winter weather, and it
No,
bugs me so bad. But sorry, continue.
no, you're good. But then the other thing that annoyed me about like May's whole or Cora's whole side story, whatever, her backstory, is that like yeah, they try to build up like this intrigue of like, oh, she's this mysterious character. Oh, wait till you find out more. Wait till you find out why she's in Japan. Oh my gosh. And then like it just ends up being this kind of over the top ridiculous story. It's like, okay, I guess, like sure. And then she gets back to her family, which is apparently the thing she's been wanting to do for like at like 2 years. And it's like, wow, yeah. And then she spends one evening with them. She's like, all right, well, time to hit the road. Come on, let's go, guys. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Let's go. Like, you. Ah. It was infuriating. I was just like, why would you leave right after you just got back?
Yeah, that is definitely one of the weaker aspects of the show's writing.
And the way they, like, work around it, she's like, "Oh, yeah, I could just call them anytime now."
Yeah. And it's like, okay, but like, that that's not the point. Like you could call your sister before too. Like maybe not all the time, but you could still do it. But like the whole thing was you wanted to get back to them. So you spend one evening with them, and you're like, all right, well that's enough family for now. That's enough family for 2 years. But then like another thing with the character is that like so the whole like show they're building up this mystery of like, oh, what happened to her dad? Oh, he's alive. We gotta find him. And then they finally find him in the flesh, and he's like luring the kaiju, and then all of a sudden he's like waving him off, and then he's just gone for like another episode or two, and it's like what? Like they finally meet, but they don't even really like meet. They just see each other for a moment and then he just disappears again. And then the moment when the dad finally technically goes like face to face with just even one of the kids, it's like the most random, abrupt, like, "Oh, hey, what's up, son? What you doing in here? What you doing in my office?" And it's like, "What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Oh, hey, what's up? Like, you just saw each other in like Africa a few days ago, randomly, after like you were presumed dead for like 2 years, and then your two kids who shouldn't know each other or know that each other exist are together in a foreign country, and Godzilla emerged from the ground and you're not even remotely concerned about them or anything. You're just like, "Oh, hey, what's up? What are you doing in my office?" Like, what? Like that? Like,
Also, his uncle who was dead but not dead and then drugged was there too. So,
yeah. So it's just like the whole show was building up to like this confrontation that like never even really happened, and then when the confrontation kind of does happen, it just felt so random and unearned and like dumb. It's like you see, we were building up to this moment the whole show basically, and then it's just Kentaro there, and it's like sure I get that it's like the emotional gut punch of like oh no, like his daughter died, but I'm pretty sure we already knew that they weren't dead. So it's like we as an audience like that's not interesting. It's like we already know they're alive, so I just didn't
Yeah, but
understand
the
that at
character
all.
doesn't.
But that's not interesting because we already know the characters are fine. Like you're watching, it's like, all right, well, you're crying, but I don't feel anything at all because I know that she's alive. She's gonna make it. Like there's no way she's gonna actually die. So I don't know. And then like are we supposed to like yeah, sure, like this father's daughter supposedly died, even though we know she didn't. But are we supposed to feel bad for this character? Because I feel like they didn't do a good job of like making a case for the dad. Like, sure, he was this young boy who like lost his parents and like all like his familial connections as a boy. But then we don't really get any development with him when he's a kid. We just like know about him, and then we know that he's the dad. And then when he's a dad, the first episode, it's like, oh, he was cheating on his two wives with each other, and he had two different families in two different countries, and then he like disappeared and abandoned them after Godzilla came out, and it's like he's just not really a sympathetic character at all.
yeah, I agree. Like, I
Yeah,
don't really care about him at all.
Yeah,
they don't build him up to be a great guy. So
No.
yeah, it's hard to sympathize with him. But I will say I don't think it's a fair criticism to say like, "Oh, well, we know that the character's alive, so who cares if you're..." The characters don't know that though. Like he doesn't know in that moment that his daughter is still alive. Yes, we as the audience know that, but he doesn't. So
but
like,
that
what is he...
inherently removes all like tension and emotion from the scene though, because they don't know, but like we do. We for sure knew.
All right, but I mean, how else are you supposed to do the scene though? Like it's his
Not reveal that they're alive.
I mean, I
I think
guess.
I think it can be done where the audience knows the character is alive, but the character doesn't know the other character is alive. I think it can be done. I just don't think they did it correctly here. And like the audience knowing whether or not a character is alive can definitely influence how you're supposed to react. So like, yeah, we may have known Kate was alive or at least not dead, stuck somewhere or whatever. I don't remember the timeline of the show. And I think if they would have made us care and actually spent time to develop the father character, whether that would be in the past, or even just spend some time in the 80s when Shaw gets back from his weird time travel event, it could have worked because we could have cared about him. But since they don't really spend time to develop much of his character, I think that's why it also, as an audience member, we're like, I don't really care this okay on it.
I do agree that the scene would have been better had like they not revealed that Kate was alive. Like, yeah, okay, maybe that would have been that scene would have been handled much better had we not known that. I will agree with that.
I don't feel like developing the dad at all would have like if it had gone the exact same way, but like they had developed the dad a bit more and he was a bit more sympathetic or something. I still don't think that that would work because we know that she's alive. So it doesn't. I think inherently you don't feel anything. Like you might feel bad for the dad, be like, oh, he's sad, but like you wouldn't be crying in that moment or be like, oh no, like he really loved her or something. Like no, she's alive, so like you'd be like, no, 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 no worries, dude. Like she's still alive, no worries. Like I just feel like they were going for like a oh no, he's really sad, like ah sort of moment, but like you don't feel that at all because we know that she's alive. And if anything, I feel like this reminded me of like when Chewbacca died in episode 9, quote unquote died, and it's like, what? He's dead? What? He can't possibly be dead. And then boom, the literal next scene they confirm he's alive. And then like it takes a little bit, but then Ray finally discovers that he's alive and she's like, "Oh my god, he's actually alive." And it's like, yeah. Yeah. So like it just doesn't make any sense. Like it just completely removes all stakes and tension from the scene because we already know as the audience that she's alive, that like these people are fine, so you don't feel anything. And I agree that things like that can work, but it's a different genre. I feel like usually when things like that are played, it can be played for like comedy, like the characters like freaking out and you're like, "Oh no, they're fine." And then it goes to something else. But like for something like this where it's supposed to be really dramatic and like sad or something, I was like, "Why would I be sad? I know that she's fine." So, I don't know. And then again, like the whole dad not being really sympathetic or that great. And then like they kind of try to build him up as like, "Oh, he's a family man and like he's been a pretty good dad to like each one of us kind of even though he wasn't really there all the time." But then it's also like, but he wasn't really that great of a dad. And even if he was kind of okay as a dad, like we never really got to see any of that. We only ever saw moments where he was gone or he was absent or he was cheating on his spouses with his two and like he had two different families. Like I feel like every moment that we're actually watching on screen is not a good moment with him. And so I don't know. I don't feel like that character worked. I don't think that Kentaro and Kate worked. I don't really like I feel like I like Kentaro and his mom's dynamic more than I like Kate and her mom's dynamic, but either way, like I just don't feel like they were interesting. And then the whole like relationship with Kentaro and May, like that, it's like they were trying to make this more layered and interesting by adding all these things, but I just felt like it just made it more annoying because it's like or like just made it more complicated for the sake of being complicated, I guess. And not really because it made a more interesting story, I feel like.
Well, what things are you talking about?
Well, just like how when they start off, it's like, wow, we haven't talked in a while. And it's like, and then they kind of vaguely allude to that, like, he ghosted her because she was uh, being too, like, she was too much for him to, like, handle, like, emotionally or mentally. And so he just, like, ghosted her, which is crappy. But like we never really quite go into detail, but it's like, oh, he still really cares about her though, and or maybe still like likes her, like loves her because he thinks very fondly of like when they were together, and then like they get back together, and then like the whole like first few episodes, she's just like, hey, what's up, dude? Like I don't forgive you, which valid. Like ghosting is terrible and it sucks, but then like I don't know, I just felt like that whole angle. It's like why. I feel like it would have just been better if May had just been like the fun like hacker best friend or something. Like I just feel like that would have just been way better. We wouldn't have to had to do like her whole backstory thing with the whole corporation and everything like that. I don't know. Her whole story was just kind of meh, meh for me.
Well, yeah,
um, but
yeah,
yeah,
I was just gonna agree with you because yeah, like we were saying before, it's just they build her up and it's not a very satisfying payoff.
yeah. And then not to keep going, but then it honestly took me until like the very end to connect the dots that uh John Goodman's character is Bill Randa. Like I was like I know that name, but I can't remember where. And then like they show the footage or they show Hiroshi watching the footage of Randa, like John Goodman Randa. I was like, "Oh my god, that's him. That's Billy." I was like, "Jesus."
Wait,
Well,
that took you the whole time to figure
Yes,
out?
because
well,
they act nothing alike.
yeah, that's what I was just about to say, is they could have done a better job casting young Bill Randa because they chose a guy that looks nothing like John Goodman.
Looks
And like
nothing like him and acts nothing like
you
him.
Well,
expect
we
me to
don't actually really know what Bill acts like, though.
yeah, yeah,
And
We know
at
what
that point, when
adult
we
Bill looks
see him
like
in
though.
Kong Skull Island, he's crazed because he lost his best, like, his wife
He didn't
and
really act
his friend.
crazed though.
Yeah, but, like, that's the in-show explanation of why these two characters could be different. Because they're like, "Oh, he went crazy," or whatever.
I guess. What were you gonna say though, Dan? Sorry.
well, I was just saying that yeah, they casted someone that like looks nothing like John Goodman, and you expect me to believe that in 10 years he's gonna look like John Goodman? Like what? Like I know that
Yeah.
the man lost his family and kind of went crazy there, but good God, that's a real big transformation right there.
Never go full John Goodman. No, I'm just kidding. I love John Goodman.
Yeah, no, John Goodman's a great actor.
Yeah, he's great. But I don't know. Like it took me that long because like I knew the name, but I didn't care enough to try to look. I was like, I'm just trying to watch, and then if I put it together, I put it together. If not, I'll look it up after. And then it took me that long to put it together, but I was like, oh my God, like just in no way did he seem like the same character. They felt like completely different people, and like you can say that it's the craziness thing. He was already like a little kooky, but I feel like the difference is that young Billy or just Billy was like a really optimistic, like cheerful, like very curious, just I don't know, like pretty like friendly guy, I guess. Like he was always kind of smiley and had a positive attitude about things. And the Bill Randa or whatever from Skull Island in the beginning of the show wasn't like that at all, really. He just like was like a gruff, cranky old man. And like the beginning of Kong Skull Island, I never got the impression that like the people treated him the way that they did because he was like this kooky, crazed like scientist guy. It just seemed like, oh, it's a government guy who doesn't believe in big monsters. He just thinks these people are crazy because they're looking for big monsters, like that sort of thing. It's not because they were acting crazy or because they seemed crazy. Like I would say the Bill Randa in Kong Skull Island and um his partner, I don't remember the character's name, but the guy with glasses, um I felt like they seemed perfectly fine, like very intelligent, blah blah blah, in the movie, and they didn't seem crazy or anything. So I don't know. I don't feel like that transition was crazy.
Well, I mean, because you bring up how, oh, like nobody was really calling him crazy. Like, there's certain context clues, though, in Kong Skull Island. Like, he talks about the sinking of the USS Lawton, that ship he was on, and how he said that it was attacked by a monster. And there's literally a part where he goes, everybody thought I was crazy. Like, you know?
Yeah, but there's a difference between like again, like it's the context of the scene. People thought he was crazy because he was talking about a giant monster attacking the ship. Anyone that would like say that, like, oh, a giant monster attacked the ship, yeah, you'd call him crazy or whatever. But he didn't act crazy, and nothing that he said really seemed that crazy. And maybe it's because we're as the audience we're in the know of like, oh, well, these creatures do exist. But again, like in the context of what that scene is talking about, it didn't seem he didn't seem crazy. It's just that people thought he was crazy because he was saying it was a big monster that attacked the ship, which as the audience like, well, yeah, there was a big monster, so he doesn't seem crazy. I don't know. That's just how I feel.
But it's interesting you bring up Bill Randa because this is where I feel like Monarch kind of contradicts like already established lore that was in the MonsterVerse because um they made it seem like because there's a line, and by the way, his partner in Skull Island, that's Houston Brooks. So there's a line with Houston Brooks where he was talking about how he wrote a paper on the Hollow Earth, and like John Goodman or Bill Randa was the only one that took him seriously. Like I feel like in Kong Skull Island, like it wasn't until like recently where Goodman or not Goodman, where Randa knew about the Hollow Earth. Like I feel like that movie made it seem like Randa just found out or had just known about the Hollow Earth, while this show establishes that he's known about the Hollow Earth since like the 40s. So those are the kind of things that I feel like the show kind of contradicts itself on.
I agree with what you were saying about Bill Randa. I do feel like they kind of tweaked it here, where I mean, he seemingly, according to the show, he basically came up with the Hollow Earth theory, or at least like knew about it. And then yeah, in Kong Skull Island, definitely felt like he picked up. What did you say? Houston Brooks?
Yeah,
That was the
Houston
character's name.
Brooks.
I felt like he picked up Houston Brooks recently because like he was fresh out of college and he wrote this paper and he was like, "Yes, I agree with this. Yes, it's so illuminating." And then like snatched him up, but like obviously, like you're saying that couldn't be the case because of what happened here. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it still felt inconsistent. But my other like main problem with the inconsistency of this show is I don't feel like Monarch ever felt how it feels here, kind of like a Black Ops CIA type organization, a government organization. I don't feel like it ever came across that way in any of the other MonsterVerse movies. Like it never felt that way in Godzilla 2014, King of the Monsters, Godzilla versus Kong. Like, I don't feel like that vibe ever came across. I always felt like they were just more science driven, or like it was like a government, like a military backed like scientific agency, and like especially Dr. Serizawa and like the main cast of people like he was around in the first couple or first yeah like couple movies that he was in. Like they never really gave me the vibe of like, oh, they're part of this monarch. Like I feel like the monarch from the movies and the monarch here feel completely different, and I don't really like the way that this monarch is at all. I feel like I thought the whole point was that monarch like documented and followed, weird creatures, weird phenomenon, kaiju, whatever. And it seems like at every turn in the show. And now I guess it was like a plot point, I guess, but at every turn where they're like, "Aren't you going to do anything about it?" And they're like, "No, we're not." And it's like, but why? That's literally the only reason you exist. You're not the military. You're not the CIA. Like you're literally Monarch, who's supposed to be studying these creatures and being the one entity that could actually help against them. But every time that you like people actually need your help or that you could be of some use, you're like, "Nope, sorry, can't do anything," or "No, we're not going to go." Like, what? I don't know. I found it really frustrating.
I was watching a video essay the other day about this show, and I think in the video essay they said that the people who worked on this TV show, there's no connection to the people who's working on the movies. Like like there's no overlap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is just from the talent that I've seen in the credits. It doesn't seem like anyone. But I mean, you would think that because of how long this, I guess, universe has been going on for 10 years now,
I mean, it
that
hasn't really though. It's got like 4 movies. That's not
it's still a
that
connected
much.
universe, though. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
much, but I mean, still, like, I mean, the fact that they're doing this means that they want to keep connecting this and building this universe out. Like, especially this. This is basically just like not necessarily filler, but more
I
like
mean, it is
background
filler.
information. I mean, it is filler, but it's more like background information for people who like really want to know more about this universe. So you would think that they would try to get with these people and be like, "Hey, look, this is what's already established. Let's really try to like flesh this out and make like a solid base of knowledge here." But it doesn't really feel like that.
I don't know. I feel like maybe they're trying to do this whole Marvel thing, and well, it's not working. I don't even think it's working for Marvel necessarily. Where they're like, oh, we'll have the movies and the TV shows and everything's interconnected. Or like maybe they're just trying something new, like a TV show to see if it works. But like they need a better story if they're gonna do a TV show. Especially if it's interconnected and they want to do this big multiverse connecty franchise.
Yeah, once again, and I think the main issue here is that they just chose the wrong characters. Like you had said, it would have been we would have been much better off had Kurt Russell been the main character, or maybe Maybe what if this show was just solely about Monarch and their formation in the 40s? Like, what if it only took place in the past? You know, maybe it could have been a better
Like
show
a
then.
Agent Carter with Godzilla.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the show I want. This is not that show.
Even though this show was like way too long, it almost does feel like they just did way too much. And like again, like this show probably could have ended by episode 6 and I think it would have been better off for it. But like in a way, like I just feel like it was way too many things to try to make it seem more complex to like keep you interested, but none of it was actually that interesting. So even if it was technically complex or like you had no idea where it was going, it's like, yeah, but I don't really care. I'm only watching this because I have to.
Well, that's a perfect transition into a question that I have then. Do you guys feel that this story would have been better told as a movie instead of a TV show?
I just throw my hat in the ring and say only yes, because then it would have been shorter. Which meant it probably would have had to been it would have had to be like a lot more focused.
Geez, did we find the first MonsterVerse project that you disliked then? Because you were just saying in Kong Skull Island that there wasn't a single project in the MonsterVerse that you
I
didn't
jinxed myself.
hate. Yeah, so
Well, I don't hate it, but
I
I
don't know.
just
I mean, you were saying you were only watching it because you had to, and that you would have liked it better as a movie because it would have been shorter. It sounds like you didn't really like it that much.
I didn't hate it though. There's a difference between hating something and not liking something that much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I have a lot of negatives to say, I guess, but again, I don't. I feel like hate is a very strong word, so I definitely didn't hate it. It's just, again, if anything, it's more just disappointing because, like I said, I liked everything in the MonsterVerse so far, and this I just felt so disinterested in. And again, like every time that it might have had an interesting idea, it just went in the complete, in my opinion, wrong direction. It's like, okay, whatever. Let's just watch how this is gonna play out.
yeah, that
But
makes sense.
yeah, so my answer is just yes, just because it would be it'd be shorter and it'd be more focused. But what about you guys?
I do think that it probably would have been better off as a movie because, like you said, it probably would have been more focused. Because, yeah, this show does try to do a lot and it kind of loses its sense of focus in trying to do so much stuff. So, and focus on so many different aspects. Um, so I think narrowing the focus, maybe like you guys said, shortening it down to 6 episodes, or yeah, just doing a movie instead of a show, I definitely think could have helped make it better. But yeah, I think the problems that this show has once again just run deeper than just like the writing and whatnot. It's just I think they were telling the wrong story.
I think the past stuff as a TV show, and then you can just put the boring present day 2015 stuff into a movie and it will fit with the rest of the MonsterVerse.
Yeah, see, that was the thing. 'Cause when this show was coming out, it was revealed that it was gonna take place like in between Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of the Monsters. And when I had first heard that, I was confused. I was like, well, we're probably not going to see a lot of Godzilla because it's revealed at the beginning of King of the Monsters that Godzilla hadn't made an appearance in 5 years. And you're setting the show in that 5 year gap where nobody has seen Godzilla. So I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting like time period in the MonsterVerse to make a show out of, but I guess we'll see what they do. And Godzilla shows up multiple times, but when he shows up, it's like in the middle of a desert where no one's around other than like the main characters and whatnot. So that's how they're able to get away with it. But
Which, speaking of that, why the f did Godzilla appear out of nowhere underground in the middle of the desert?
I think they probably just put Godzilla there so it could be interesting.
yeah, let's face it, the only reason why Godzilla appears is because they want him to be in the show. So
I guess, but like I feel like that would have been another instance where they should have just done a random other kaiju, like the Alaska one or the dragon one. Like it specifically being Godzilla made no sense to me. I was like, but why? He's not a desert creature, and there was no like radiation portal there, so I don't know. I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. I was like, why specifically is it Godzilla? Like, yeah, sure, it's cool that it's Godzilla, but I don't know. It just seemed like it didn't make any sense to me. But before we move on from talking about the characters completely, we didn't talk about this one particular character that I want to read the room, see what everyone's thoughts were on him. What did you guys think of Tim?
I mean, I thought he was fine. Like, I didn't dislike him or anything.
I thought he was in one of the other movies. Turns out he's not.
Yeah.
Like, well, first, he's apparently the lowest level of Monarch whatever this. So they put him in a broom closet. Right. But then he's like, okay, instead of talking to my boss or whatever, I'm just gonna go kidnap a young lady. Not so great. That's not a good look. I mean, by the end of uh, the season, who's like a little more like understandable. We're like, okay, I guess I can see what he's like fighting with Monarch. But then they're like, oh yeah, he works for Apex, and May's all like, why are you doing that? I was like, again, I don't know what that's supposed to mean because they didn't really explain anything.
I think she just felt betrayed because like he was working for the woman who like made her life hell and prevented her from going home. Which I mean,
Yeah.
it was her fault for not being able to go home and do all that. But
Yeah, but like she doesn't really have any connection to Tim, so I don't understand why she cares. Or he
I,
like I don't know.
I guess just because like they had shared trauma together. I don't
I guess.
know. I feel like Tim was wildly inconsistent. Like
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
when he first appeared, I was like, is he not does he not want to tell his boss because like he wants to get a promotion or something, or like prove himself? And then that was like, no, not really. And then yeah, and then like he seems to be portrayed initially, like and throughout the show as like the silly goofy guy who like maybe is a good person but is just trapped in this organization that he cares about but like can't seem to make a difference in. But then yeah, he goes and just decides he's going to go kidnap this young woman in a different country for no I mean for the purposes of like he wants to like get the files or whatever, but still like why would that be your course of action? I and then like he flip flops all the time on like, oh, I'm buddies with these people, oh, I'm buddies with these people, oh, I'm working for this person, I'm working for that person. I, I don't know. He just there was fun moments with him, and I feel like overall I kind of liked him. But again, like he was just so inconsistent. I was like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to feel about you at this point. I don't feel like it was like the last maybe 4 episodes where I'm like, okay, he seems cool. I think like after Africa, which might have been like episode 5 or something, I don't know. But when they like meet up with him at the airport, I feel like that was the turning point where he was like, or it's like, all right, well he's pretty cool, I guess. He's fine. He's trying to help more than be an obstacle, even if he has been an obstacle before.
Yeah, out
I
of like the 2015 characters, Tim is probably one of my more favorite ones. So I agree with that.
Yeah,
inconsistent is a great way to put this like show and the characters because it
agreed.
is very inconsistent. It's like they do one thing and then they do something else. And like there's no clear antagonist in this show either. It's like, oh, it's Monarch, but it's not Monarch. It's Apex, but it's also not Apex. It's the father, but it's like also not the father. And it's like in the past, it's like it's the United States Army, but like it's also not. It's like they were like, we have like 20 ideas, but they didn't just pick one to stick with, which they should have done.
Yeah, once
And like,
again, this show really did just lack focus.
yeah, and like having Shaw be the main character probably would have been beneficial. Um,
Yeah.
because they try to make him the
Agreed.
antagonist too,
Yeah. For like 5 minutes.
which was like, "What are you doing? Stop."
Not everyone can be the bad guy. God. Just for clarification, I guess. The way that I took the scene where they showed off the Apex logo on like the side screen of the woman who was Cora slash May's boss, her company was called AET. It wasn't the same as Apex, though, right? Like I thought my interpretation of the scene where the Apex logo showed up was that she, like Cora slash May's boss, was getting a call or like something like that, or being contacted by Apex, like Mr. Simmons or whatever, and like that's why the logo popped up. Is that correct? Or is
I-
the implication that that company is just Apex?
Yeah, I figured that that company is just Apex. Like they were that company before, and then they rebranded themselves as Apex. That's what I got from it, at least.
Hmm.
Yeah. I thought it was, like, cause of whatever deal Monarch made with her that they, like, gave her whatever to create Apex. Cause like, they made a deal to get May out, so I assume that deal came with other things such as Apex.
Well, I thought Apex was just like a whole other entity that was that because like Mr. Simmons is like the owner or whatever, and I'm pretty sure he's the guy. He's like the rich guy who owns the company that we see in Godzilla vs Kong. I thought
I mean, maybe, I don't know, I don't remember that movie.
Mr. Simmons is the character I was thinking of from Godzilla vs Kong. He is the
Yeah.
owner of Apex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, we could have been interpreting that scene wrong as well. So I don't know. All right, let's shift topics over. We've already kind of talked about some of our least favorite aspects of the show, and it's definitely like the characters and the writing. I feel like, can we all agree that's probably like our least favorite aspect of the show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, but did you guys have any aspects that you did like? Like, I'll start us off. For example, I liked the world building. Like, I liked like it was cool like seeing like after the events of Godzilla 2014, which they now refer to as G Day, which is kind of interesting. Like you see like cities have these shelters now, and then like they have like early a warning systems, so like in like when there's like in the very first episode, they like Tokyo is being like they're doing these tests or drills or whatever for whenever like a kaiju attack is imminent. So like I thought that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that one episode where they go back to San Francisco because I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but I just thought it was super interesting to learn about like the aftermath of San Francisco, about how like the city is like pretty much just like abandoned and they got like they have to deal with like looters. They're doing like tours of the destroyed city, like little pieces of information like that I found to be very interesting because that's not something that the Godzilla movies ever focus on. Like they never focus on cities being rebuilt or like what it's truly like after a monster attack. So I thought the fact that this show kind of showed what that was like, or at least kind of alluded to what it was like, was really interesting.
Yeah. I agree with that and like how you were saying like the shelter things. I felt like that was an interesting touch that I appreciated because like we kind of see the shelter thing happening in Godzilla 2014. I don't know if those are just bomb shelters. I'm assuming so. But like I thought it was interesting that they actually started practicing and doing that after quote unquote G Day. Um but yeah, I think the showing the aftermath of the Godzilla emergence on G Day and everything, that was an interesting aspect. Which in a way, not only again, that could have been its own show, and I feel like that could have been pretty interesting, but also I feel like that's what a lot of people have wanted, probably not at this point anymore, but like after Avengers Endgame came out, I feel like a lot of people just wanted like a Disney Plus show showing like just regular people in that affected post snap world and showing like what that would have been like. I feel like that kind of reminded like gave me like I was like, oh, like that this is kind of give me like that vibe of what people wanted for that show in like that small snippet. But obviously that wasn't like a big part of the show. But it's what just what it reminded me of. But yeah, I guess like in those regards, I agree that I like the world building.
Yeah. What about you, Miranda? How did you feel about the world building?
There was some interesting things, like, in Japan, their posters for Godzilla and their safety paths and stuff was interesting. Um, and the episode where they go back into San Francisco, I mean, they, like, kinda touch on it through the mom talking about it, but, like, they don't really other than us seeing other than the audience seeing destruction, they don't really expand on any of it really, in my opinion. Um, like, yeah, we get to see the aftermath, we get to see the destroyed buildings, but, like, they don't spend time to talk about it. I don't think it was fleshed out. Not really.
Well, I mean, once again, they expand. They talk about what the aftermath of San Francisco was like. You know, some people think that San Francisco didn't even happen, like G-Day didn't happen, like it was a hoax and stuff like that. And you know, like I think they expanded on it a bit, like to keep it
I mean,
interesting
yeah,
at
they,
least.
like, talked about it, but, like, if they wanted to expand more on that aftermath stuff, I think they should have explored other characters, not just Kate, to include that world building of like, okay, here's what it's like living post G Day. Other than them like mentioning occasionally, like, oh, it's a hoax, it's CGI, or whatever. I don't know. I feel like since we're so focused on Kate and her trying to find her father, like that other little stuff isn't talked about as much as it could have been, and that could have definitely helped create this very interesting world. Because even in the movies, we don't get much of, like, everyday life.
Exactly. And that's what made that aspect of the story really interesting to me. That's what made that episode interesting to me because while they don't explore it as much as they could have, they do kind of touch on what everyday life was like after a monster attack, which I think is interesting. I want to see more giant monster movies kind of explore that idea personally.
I agree. I think that could be interesting. I also feel like it could be interesting to I don't know if they've ever done this in any of the movies, but I think it could be interesting to see like a movie where like a kaiju goes back to where it already like destroyed the city, just to like see the reactions or to see if like there's more like sheltering built as like a precaution or I don't know. Like what I mean, I could see some people being like, "Oh, well that'd be boring" or something, which is fair. But like what if they went back to Hong Kong or something in one of the MonsterVerse movies? Just partly to see like how far along they are in rebuilding the city, but also just to see like what new fortifications or things they might have built or something. I don't know. Could be interesting.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because in the first episode, I think when Kate is being driven to her father's apartment, the guy driving her was like, they're spending all of this money on these defenses and whatnot, and I don't think we ever see them, but it sounds like they were prepping Tokyo for like an attack or something like that.
Hmm. Interesting. I didn't even catch that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Which, by the way, anyone else find it really funny that Tokyo has been in the MonsterVerse at least twice and still has yet to be destroyed?
It's just biding its time.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was like scrolling through social media and like somebody had bought that up and there was a comment that's like, "Oh, they must be saving Tokyo for like the big like event or something like that."
They have a big event. They already fought King Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla. What else are they gonna do?
I don't know. They're doing Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, so
Well, yeah, and he's gonna fight a giant, a giant ape
yeah.
Orangutan.
Yeah, speaking of that,
in the underworld.
I don't want to go too off topic, but like Adam Wingard is saying that the threat in Godzilla X Kong is like the greatest threat to ever exist in the monsterverse, and like unless he's hiding like a secret like final boss enemy or something like that, it's going to take a lot of convincing for me to believe that another big monkey is more powerful than King Ghidorah.
Yeah. But also, like, on the note of what else is there left, like, aren't there still a lot of other kaiju that, like, especially like classic kaiju that they could use? Like, I don't remember all the names, but like, I don't know, like Gamera or Jet Jaguar or
Well,
Space
Gamera's not
Godzilla.
Toho, so
Yeah.
they'd have to get the rights for Gamera, but there's
Oh,
definitely other Toho
I
monsters that they could
mean,
still
what's
utilize.
like what's like that one with like the red eyes and like the spikes for hands?
Gigan?
Yeah, Gigan. That's a
A,
big one,
lo-
isn't it?
a lot of fans want to see Destroya. Like the two most popular
Yeah,
requests are like Anguirus, Destroya, and Biolante.
yeah, yeah. We still have those guys
yeah,
at
but
least,
like,
and two other iterations of Mechagodzilla.
I don't know. I feel like it would get samey.
I mean,
Like,
it's
there's only so many
Well, yeah,
times
I
you
was
can
gonna
fight a
say
giant monster. Like,
there's
come on,
there's
give us good
only
plot here, please. I'm like, give
there,
me a good human story, like, so I can be entertained when I see the monster fight. Because even though there was interesting monster fights in the last episode of the show, I just did not care about it because I didn't
ooh.
care about rest of the show.
Well, Miranda, like if you want good human stories, I don't know if the kaiju genre is gonna be that for that because Godzilla minus one
It
was the
doesn't even have to
exception.
be good, it just has to be interesting, like, give me some aliens, give me some weird individuals, instead, we just keep getting whiny, wet noodle protagonists in the Monsterverse, and,
I mean,
I like
I feel like they
I
were
just want something interesting.
trying to do something a bit more like heartfelt and personal to kind of maybe to counteract like the criticisms that they got in like the last couple of movies where like that the human stories didn't really work. But then I think they went way too far and they pushed too hard for emotion where it came across as like annoying or grating or over dramatic. Because like there was like a lot of crying in this show, but a lot of times it was like it felt frustrating. It's like, okay, like you were just crying, why are we crying now again? And like these characters are all damaged in different ways. So like in some time, like sometimes it's like, all right, I can understand it, I guess. Like Kate's PTSD. It's like that was a constant, and like it was kind of annoying in the San Francisco episode to me, where it's like every 5 feet she froze. I'm like, oh my god, you need to just run. But it's like, okay, I get it. Like she's still dealing with all this PTSD. I get it. I get it. Like I understand. But as like a viewer, I mean, like stuff like that can get annoying. So I don't know. I mean, obviously there's good ways to do it. Like we just watched Godzilla minus one. There's very good ways to tell uh sad, interesting, slower paced kaiju stories, and obviously this was not it. But I feel like they try to counteract the criticisms they've been getting in the Monsterverse, but then just went way too far in a direction that no one really asked for. And so yeah, it was a little unsatisfying or quite unsatisfying in that regard. But I mean, like Dan was saying, at the end of the day, like for me, like the show is disappointing, but at the end of the day, like I don't watch the MonsterVerse for the human stories. Like I'm aware that that's the least interesting story. I mean, that's the least interesting aspect of most kaiju like movies. I only really care about the kaiju aspect. So like a lot of the earlier Godzilla movies that we were watching, I did not care at all about the humans or their story or anything, or even like the Zillions. Like the Zillions are silly, but like
But yeah, then that's fun, and it's silly, and it's this isn't silly, like, it
it's
needs
not.
like, I feel like if they would just lean into the aliens, we have aliens silliness of kaiju movies, the MonsterVerse would work better.
But I feel like it has leaned into the silliness, but just not in that way. Like Godzilla versus Kong is very silly,
And Godzilla X Kong looks like it's going to be even more over the top.
Yeah. I just feel like it's a different silly that maybe you don't prefer, but they're definitely still like leaning silly. This project did not for sure, obviously, but
Well,
the
I
movies have
will
been.
say, ever since King of the Monsters, I feel like the MonsterVerse movies have just been modern day Showa era films.
I disagree.
I mean, they're just as over the top.
No, there's something different about these ones. They just I don't know. I guess maybe I just don't like them.
Well, they're just not 60s kaiju movies. They're modern day kaiju movies. And inherently, they're not going to be the same kind of silly or campy because it's just a completely different time period. We don't make movies like they did back then because things are just completely different.
Yeah, like Godzilla 2014 is nothing like a Showa era film, but like I honestly feel like King of the Monsters and then Godzilla versus Kong, they feel like Showa era movies to me, but that's just how I feel.
I mean, I agree. Like, I feel like all the kaiju stuff is definitely reminds me of like the older kaiju movies. And I mean, in the same way that I didn't care about the human stories at all, like it was just the filler stuff to get through in between the kaiju stuff. Like that's how I feel about the MonsterVerse at this point. But at least, at least for like for me, like the thing I enjoy about the MonsterVerse is all the kaiju fights because these movies have all the budget and ability in the world to show what those movies couldn't. And I mean, yeah, those movies have charm and in their own like they're special in their own way. And obviously some people will prefer those movies and that's totally fine. But like for me, like as opposed to like watching that or like watching these movies, not this show, but those movies, like I like those movies more because like it's kind of showing everything that the people that originally were making these movies probably wanted to show but obviously couldn't because of the limits of their technology and of their time and things like that and of like the suits, like you can't move around in those suits like these kaiju can in the movies and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think basically what I've learned so far with my kaiju watching experience is that I don't like the MonsterVerse. I don't like when America messes with Godzilla.
fair.
Because even in like the millennia era of the Godzilla Toho movies, they're like silly and they have some of that technology to do the stuff they want, but there's still like this weird charm to them. And I feel like these MonsterVerse ones don't have charm to them. They just, to me, feel like, hey, we have a bazillion dollars. Let's just do something with it. I don't know if that's just because I'm so used to seeing the Toho ones, or if that's comes down to a writing thing or a CGI thing. Like, they're entertaining to watch, and they're interesting, the MonsterVerse ones, but I don't know, there's something missing from them. But I guess that's where I am with the MonsterVerse as, like, Dan, you are with Godzilla minus one, where there's something missing, or like we talked about our last episode, where we're watching these things and sometimes something is missing, and if that missing thing was there, it could have elevate or improve our opinions on whatever we're watching. So I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I definitely agree that like the American interpretation, the American Godzilla movies they're always different. Like they do definitely have a different feel. And like you said, it could be a budgetary thing because the Japanese movies have budgetary constraints that the American ones don't, or it could just be like a stylistic thing because the Japanese filmmaking and American filmmaking are very different, and as in writing. But yeah, I mean that's fair. If it's just if it's just a feeling that like if it was there you would feel it, but it's not there, so you don't. I get it.
Mhm.
That's fair.
Or like even Godzilla 1998, that has whatever this charm to it. And I don't know why that one has it and the MonsterVerse doesn't. And by watching this show, it doesn't really help me with my opinions on the MonsterVerse. It's just kind of the same lackluster story, medium, two bad characters, sometimes interesting, but not really anything too in depth with things.
Yeah, and even I agree because I said this I think in our Godzilla minus one review that like America still has yet to impress me with how they do Godzilla movies. Like I truly do feel like America, Hollywood is capable of making a good Godzilla movie, but they just haven't found the right people to work on it.
I agree. I feel like they just need someone with a solid story and a solid vision, and it could be one of the best Godzilla movies yet because they would have
Exactly.
way more budget than any of the Japanese ones do. So they could do a lot with it, but I mean, again, it really just comes down to the creative in charge, and I guess how much creative freedom they have, I guess, too.
Yeah. So to kind of shift the focus back to our Monarch discussion, were there any other aspects of the show that you guys liked? Like, did you feel the performances were good? Did you feel the VFX looked all right? How were you guys feeling on those two fronts?
It was okay. The special effects looked like a TV show with money had money for special effects. So nothing the best, not the best. Like world ending, we changed CGI. It looked it looked good, more than passable, and it didn't look like the CW, but it's because it's a show that has money to back it for the CGI. That's a key component to this show is the Titans, so they had to have that money to have the CGI Titans. And for performances, I think everyone did okay for what they had for their parts. I think that Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell did a good job at portraying the same character, and that's about it for me.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the visual effects looked pretty good for a TV show, but it's like you said, Miranda, it's Apple. Like they're gonna have the funding. And it's kind of like, watching The Mandalorian and seeing how good the effects looked in that show. It's like, well, it's Disney. They got that Disney money
Yeah, be
behind
like
it.
they're backing this thing with bunch of money. Like
Exactly.
it's not the CW who went bankrupt. It's like I don't even think you could talk whether or not it's good or bad because it is a show that has backing for this
Yeah.
specific thing.
Yeah, but in the end, TV shows are usually, I mean, I'm sure there are some TV shows that are more expensive than movies, but most of the time TV shows are going to be have a smaller budget than the movies. So like I'm presuming this has a smaller budget than most of the MonsterVerse films. So for having that smaller budget, I think the effects looked good, but once again, it's because they got that Apple money. So that
They
Apple money
also
did pay off. What's up?
they also had the fight with Godzilla and the dragon thing at night. Like, there's only 1 or 2 times where we actually see a kaiju in daylight, like Godzilla in the desert, and, like, maybe one other. Rest of them are always in the dark, which means they can hide stuff.
True, but I will say with the fight between Godzilla and the Ion Dragon, yeah, it was in a dark scene, but at least you could still see
I
everything.
couldn't see anything.
Well, no, not me. I could still see.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if it's the TV settings or whatever, but I wish that modern day television shows and movies, just media in general, can remember that, hey, this is a TV show or something people are watching, and that we need to properly light our scenes so we can see them. Like Lord of the Rings, yes, they're fighting in the middle of the night, but there's still light and I can still see the whole fight. Whereas, like, with the last fight, I couldn't see anything, not really to anything that like, I could see what's going on, but not in a way that I could really get engaged with it because 'cause I'm, like, trying my eyes are straining to see what's going on.
Yeah, I think that might have been a TV issue because I could see everything fine as well. Like it was one of those scenes where it's nighttime, but it's lit well enough by like moonlight or something that it's not completely dark. Like you can definitely
Mm.
see everything fine.
Yeah, it had that huge
Glow.
aurora borealis wall in the background.
Yeah.
Then, yeah,
But
maybe it's a TV setting. But
yeah.
I my point still stands. I wish people would actually light their night scenes properly.
Yeah, so I did think that the VFX, even though I understanding that it has the Apple money behind it, they looked pretty good for a TV show. Um, the performances were fine. Once again, like Kentaro and Kate got to be kind of annoying at times, but I don't think that was so much the performance, more so just how those characters were written. I enjoyed Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell's always great in whatever he usually ends up being in, and yeah, Wyatt Russell did a great job portraying his father in his quote unquote younger years. And yeah, I thought all the characters did fine in their performances. Nothing really stood out, but like I was entertained enough, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel like well, okay, I'll start with the VFX. Yeah, for a show, like the VFX are pretty solid, I would say. I think Godzilla always looked really good, which, that's good. He definitely looked, I think, the best. Maybe they were allowed to use like an asset from the movies or something, and that's why he looked so good.
I mean,
But
probably why would they spend time to remake an asset if they already have Godzilla?
because they might not have gotten permission, I don't know. But
But isn't
uh,
this like co-produced with Warner Brothers or whatever?
co-produced with
Or
Legendary.
whatever, Legendary, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, though,
So
it doesn't
why
mean
wouldn't
anything
they
though.
share?
Sometimes things are dumb and complicated, and so I don't know. But
I guess so. Yeah.
aside from that, so his asset always looked really good. I think the texture on the Ion Dragon, the textures looked high res, but I didn't really like the design, specifically of the face. I felt like the face looked really ugly, but not in like a ooh monster ugly, but like just a bad design ugly to me. But the rest of it was interesting. And VFX wise, again, like I thought the texture work was good. And then I don't even know what it was, but like the wolf porcupine creature thing from Alaska, that was a really weird looking creature, and I think it looked fine for the scenes it was in. Um, so yeah, overall, I would say the VFX are pretty solid. I mean, again, especially the main thing here being, especially for a TV show. For a movie, I think the worst VFX shot, and it was like right at the beginning of the show, so it was like, ooh, hopefully this isn't indicative of the rest of the show, was the shots of John Goodman Randa on Skull Island. I was like, yeesh, these effects are not great. But everything else, and I think maybe that's just because they were like comping a real life person into a VFX environment and stuff, whereas all these other VFX are just completely all animated. So maybe that's why. But other than that, I thought, yeah, I agree. I thought the VFX were pretty solid. And then as far as performances go, I agree with you guys. I mean, I thought they were serviceable. I agree with Dan. I don't blame any of the actors for any of the decisions that were really made. I would blame more the direction and or the writing than anything else. I don't. I feel like these actors definitely showed. They all showed that they had a range to either do like comedic things or to like do really sad things or stuff like everything in between. But it's just like the writing in the show didn't allow them to be good at one thing. It was just like a cluster of like everything all the time at once. So it's kind of hard to gauge performances like that, I feel like. But yeah, I thought they did as good of a job as they could have. I think if I had to pick favorite performances, uh, I liked Keiko. I liked Keiko's character and that actor's performance. Um, yeah, I'll go with her. I think I liked her the most.
All right. Well, what about like favorite episodes or like favorite moments and sequences? I'll start us off. I will say there are some moments in the show that I did like. I thought that what was the name? It wasn't the Hollow Earth. It was, they called it something else. Do you guys remember what they called that place that they went into?
At the end,
Yeah.
I thought that was just the Hollow Earth.
See, that's
No,
the
it's
thing.
not Hollow Earth. It's like the in between Earth
Yeah.
and the Hollow Earth. I don't know. It's some
It's Axis Mundi. I think that's what it's
yeah.
called.
Yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
is.
see, I was confused at first because I thought that was the Hollow Earth, but I guess it's not, which is weird.
Yeah, weird. I guess it
Be-
explains why it looks so different.
yeah, but and why time works differently too, because I
Yeah.
don't think that was. See, that's what I was going to bring up. So this whole time, so Kurt Russell's character has been alive since the 40s. So like this show takes place in 2015. His character should be like near 100 years old, and that's something they bring up in the show a couple times. And like at first Kurt Russell's just like, "Oh, well I just got good genes." And like you're sitting here thinking, "Really? Is that going to be the explanation they give us? Kurt Russell just has good genes. Come
Nah,
on."
he got Captained America.
Yeah.
That's honestly exactly what I was thinking in my brain thinking. That was my exact
Yeah.
dialogue. I was like, really?
Yeah,
Okay, whatever.
exactly. Exactly. So I was hoping they were gonna expand upon, because they do bring something up. They do kind of hint at it in the show where it's like, "Oh, I heard about a mission that went wrong," or something like that. So it's like, "Okay, tell me more." And then we finally get to see what happens. So Kurt Russell in the 60s was part of an expedition that went into Axis Mundi to like, I guess, explore it or survey it or whatever. His expedition crash landed, so I guess he was like the only survivor. And
Well, other
like,
people survived. He's just the only one that got out.
yeah, that's true. Because Keiko, we find out later that Keiko also
No,
survived,
well, yeah, but she got
but she,
sucked in there
yeah,
beforehand. But
yeah,
on
she
his
wasn't part.
expedition, he and his team got there and started doing stuff, but then they got attacked, and then he got sucked through the portal back into Earth,
Yeah.
where
So
everyone else died.
so what we find out is that time in Axis Mundi, or Mundi, however the hell you pronounce it, works differently than it does on Earth. So like, I don't know the exact conversions, but we'll just say that like 1 hour in Axis Mundi is like 1 week on Earth. So Kurt Russell, he was down there for like what, about a week or so, and he ended up losing 20 years of his life. So when he got back, it was the 80s instead of the 60s, and he was still the same age. So that explains why he's not as old as he should be. And I'm going to be honest, I was satisfied with that. I thought that was a pretty cool slash decent explanation for why Kurt Russell isn't as old as he should be. I was okay with that. So I did kind of like that. And then, yeah, I got to bring it up. The final episode, the fight between Godzilla and the Ion Dragon. Yeah, it was only like 40 seconds long, but god damn was it awesome. Like those were the best 40 seconds of the entire show. That fight scene was awesome. And yeah, the lesson to be learned there is you do not come at the king like that and not expect your ass to be handed to you. Just saying. Just saying.
Yeah, I agree. Both of the on both the Iron Dragon and Godzilla fight being like the best moment in the show, but also just like the final episode being, in my opinion, the best. I yeah, I feel confident in saying that. I think like so the Godzilla Iron Dragon fight was probably the coolest moment in the show, but I think the most well done moment in the show otherwise was when Shaw is hiding behind a tree and he doesn't want to like reveal himself too quickly to Keiko when they're in X what is it, Axis Mundi?
Yeah, Axis Mundi.
Axis Mundi. When they're in there, and I feel like that moment was very well done. That was like the only genuinely, I think, successful, like serious, like sad moment in the entire show for me. I feel like that moment, I was like, wow, like that'd be heart-wrenching to be her in that moment, and I feel like she did a really great job of selling her, like, like her being distressed and trying to come to terms with that happening. And then I think his reaction to seeing her was really well performed, and then her reaction to seeing him, and then just having to accept everything. I think that was very well done. Um, yeah, I don't like. I was looking forward to seeing the scene where they kind of went back to the Bikini Atoll testing, but I was kind of disappointed by that. I don't really feel like that added anything interesting. I didn't really care for like the general or the general's relationship with Shaw. I didn't really care about any of the military stuff. So yeah, but the final episode, I thought I liked both of those parts a lot. So
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Like, more credit should be given to that moment where Shaw kind of reveals himself to Keiko, because, yeah, that was very well done in how they did that. And I think that should be commended for how well done that scene was. But I gotta ask you, Udi, so how did you feel about the thing that we love seeing so much in the movies and TV, fake out death? How did you feel about Keiko's fake out death? Because I was kind of annoyed.
I rolled my eyes
Yeah.
so hard they went to the back of my head. When
Yeah.
she popped up, I was like, "Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Why?"
Yep. Yep.
Because like we didn't even see her get like sucked into like a vortex or be like fall into a portal. She just got eaten by bugs. So I was like, why? I guess like you could. I think from what I remember, I think the building came down, so maybe you could just say like there was a portal there, and so she fell in with all the bugs and everything. But it's like, why couldn't she just stay dead? Like I liked her; she was my favorite character of the show, I guess, as I made that discovery while on air. But I was just like, oh my god, of course she's alive. Like, sure, did it lead to this great moment? Probably the best emotional payoff in the entire show. Sure, is it an interesting idea having the grandmother and granddaughter and her son all get to meet and like be in the same space together? Yeah, sure, it's an interesting idea. But just like as soon as the arrow got shot, I was like, oh, it's gonna be May or something, and then it was her, and I was like, are you freaking serious? uh It's whatever. I have accepted it, but I definitely rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, of course. Of course. People can't just die. No. They always have to come back. But anyway. What about you, Miranda?
Yeah, did you have any favorite moments or favorite episodes or parts at all?
Not really. I mean, I liked the past stuff, but they did not spend enough time actually building a relationship between Kay and Bill and Shaw. Um, the like three middle, four middle episodes, I did not care about any parts of them. I don't care about May's backstory. I don't care about Kate's backstory. So like, it was, if y'all haven't noticed, a really hard, like, I had to like climb my way through this television show. Cause like, I just wish they would lean into more cheesy camp sci-fi, and instead we got this melodrama of boringness. But with the past stuff, I do like the concept of what they were doing with the past stuff, although I wish they would explain more. And I do agree that the moment between old Shaw and Kay in the in between world was done very nicely. Um, they definitely did that in a like thoughtful way, I guess, cuz like he hadn't seen her in so long and he did age, and she still thinks it's like 1962. So like I think they handled that really well. Um and then of course I like the graphics of Godzilla, like the emergency graphics in Japan, which I think I mentioned earlier. but
All right,
yeah.
now a question I'm really interested in hearing your guys' thoughts on. Do you want to see a season 2?
Sure, if it only focuses on young Shaw, Kay, and Bill, and all the time we didn't see them. I would love that. I don't care about Kate or anyone else. I don't really want to see whatever is coming next for those characters.
Not even if Kong is there?
Nope, not even him.
What about you, Udi? Do you want to see a season 2?
I mean, I'd be down for season two. Just get more MonsterVerse content. This may have been my least favorite MonsterVerse project, probably, but I mean, I like this universe, and I feel like it's, in my opinion, I think it's the second most successful cinematic universe to date. The other one just being the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I don't know. I think it's interesting, and I'm glad it's still going. I thought that it would be over after Godzilla versus Kong. So the fact that we're still getting more, I'm happy about. Um, so yeah, I'd check it out. I'm not gonna go and say that I'd be dying to watch it, and I would be counting down the days for season two, but I'm sure we'd cover it here, so I'd just watch it when I needed to for this. But I'd be curious to see what they would do with Kong. I will say that I thought the ending of the show felt super anticlimactic. It's like, okay, yeah, everyone's together. Oh no, gotta run inside. Kong's coming, and it's like, okay, sure, why not? But yeah, I'd watch another one. But what about you?
I would like to see a season 2 because I want to see what other aspects of the monsterverse that they could show off because yeah, at the end of the final episode, they tease Skull Island and they tease Kong. So it would be cool to see like what happened in the gap between King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. Because in Godzilla versus Kong, we find out that Skull Island is being bombarded by a storm and that the Iwi tribe all perished. So, like, would season 2 kind of explore that? Because it seems like that's what they're kind of building up to. And it's also funny because the entire time, Monarch is worried about another G Day like event happening. So, like, I would like to see what goes on during the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters because suffice it to say shit hits the fan with that movie. So like Monarch the entire time is trying to prevent something like that from happening and then when it does happen it would be interesting to see like oh crap like what's everybody like is everyone freaking out in Monarch now like what are they doing so like it would be interesting to see the reaction of those characters that work for Monarch to see their reaction to all the crap that happens in King of the Monsters because yeah, what happens in King of the Monsters is like a step above G Day. So I do want to see more I would hope though that if we do get a season 2 that the focus is a little better and that maybe the writing is a little better and I can't really ask for them to do more monster scenes because it's a TV show. Like I went into this show not expecting there to be a lot of monster scenes, and there really wasn't. But like when the monsters did show up, it was really cool. And like I said, I love the fight scene between Godzilla and the Ion Dragon. So like, but I'm hoping that maybe with the season 2, once again, it's just all about balance. Hopefully they can find a better way to like balance some of the monster scenes with the human story, but we would just need like just a better human story overall. To I for me to think that season 2 would be a huge improvement, personally.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I feel like setting season two during King of the Monsters would be really interesting, like you said, because like we were watching Monarch try to build up and prepare for something like King of the Monsters, and the King of the Monsters would literally be that thing happening. But like you said, you would hope to see more monsters. I think inherently because of the events of that film, I think they would need to show more monsters because it's like all the Titans coming out at once. So if they didn't show even like a little bit more kaiju's, I feel like it would feel kind of cheap. or you'd be like, "Oh no, run away," and then just not see anything. You'd be like, "Meh."
Yeah, I think if we do get a season two, like it's probably because we find out that while Kate, May, and Kurt Russell were in Axis Monday, they lost about 2 years. So when they come back, 2 years have passed. So that would mean it's 2017, and I don't think the events of King of the Monsters happened until 2019. So if we do get season two, I'd imagine it would probably just be more focused on like Skull Island and Kong because that's what it seems like they're building up to, and then like King of the Monsters maybe would be season three, but then again, I don't know. I don't know what they have planned, so we'll have to see if we do get a season two. That is.
Although apparently I'm very cold on this show. It's it's interesting that they're trying this. And with Marvel having their TV shows and maybe other franchises trying to like expand through a TV show is interesting, and at least they're trying something new. Um so if there is a season 2, I mean we'll probably cover it, so I'll probably watch it if we're covering it. Um but they're just trying stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I will say if there is a season two, I feel like we're kind of obligated to cover it. So we'll probably end up covering it.
I don't know, maybe because we're watching it for the show, it felt like work or like homework, like I have to do this. So then there was like this block in my mind. But then like I don't feel like that way with when I watch the show ones. Like we're covering the Showa movies, but I don't feel like that's homework. So I don't know. Maybe I got some things to think about because of this conversation.
This is also like at least, if not more, like 5 times longer than those movies.
That
So
is true.
Yeah, not to mention that like once again the Showa era films are just flat out like focus on the monster battles and stuff like that. The monsters, even though the show is called Monarch Legacy of Monsters, the monsters were not the focus for this show. The humans really were the focus, and like you guys were saying, just the human story wasn't that strong. So that's why you didn't probably didn't enjoy this as much as the Showa era movies, Miranda, because the monsters aren't the focus, the humans are, and the human story just wasn't that great.
Yeah.
I did have a question that um was am I incorrect, or is Dr. Mira like a new like reinterpretation of an old character from like an older Godzilla movie?
Are you talking about Keiko?
Well, yeah, but like the name Dr. Mira, is that, was there another Dr. Mira in another older Godzilla movie, or am I imagining that?
I mean, not as far as I know. There might have been, but if
I
there
don't know.
was, it was probably just a scientist character that was in like a scene or two. I don't know.
Okay. It sounded familiar, so I wasn't sure, but it might just be from something else or something.
I mean, it could be because like Mira is just Japanese last name. It's entirely possible that another Godzilla movie used that name at one point.
Yeah, that's true. I also think it's the name of a Lamborghini car that I really like, so it might just be that, to be honest. But there's just a Lamborghini called the Lamborghini Miura, so could be that. But I thought it was a Godzilla like previous. Like I thought it was like a sort of like Serizawa situation where they were just reinterpreting an old character, but oh well, it is what it is.
One thing I wanted to mention, because now that we're kind of on the topic of Easter eggs, I swear the spacesuits that young Kurt Russell wore on the expedition to Axis Mundi looked like the spacesuits that they wore in Invasion of Astro Monster. Like they were very similar, and I
I
kind
mean,
of
they're
like
like
to.
60s like spacesuits with the orange, so like that's probably why they look familiar.
Yeah, probably, but in my head canon, I'm gonna call it an Easter egg because
Okay.
it looked so similar. All right, Miranda, I think we're good to move on to the lizard fact of the day. What is today's lizard fact?
Today's lizard fact of the day is about the carrot-tailed viper gecko. It is native to Pakistan and can be found in Iran. They're nocturnal and eat a variety of insects, including flies and crickets. They're also called turnip-tailed lizards. It's a reference to their plump tail where they store fat. They have a ladder pattern and scales of black, gray, beige, and white colors to give them their unique look. So, unfortunately, not orange like a carrot, but still interesting.
So they don't eat carrots then.
No,
Oh.
I guess not.
All right. What let's move on to our star ratings now. What would you guys rate Monarch Legacy of Monsters out of a 5-star scale? We'll start with you, Udi. What would you rate this show?
So I know I said a lot of negative things about the show, but as I said before, I don't hate the show. Hate is a very strong word. I do not use it lightly in any case, but particularly not with media, I guess, just because like that would be most of the cases where I would hate anything. Um, but that being said, I think I would give this show. I'm stuck at a 2 and a 2.5, but I'd say I would give it a 2, I guess. As much as I'm leaning more 2.5 because I feel like it's just fine, which is what 2.5 out of 5 would be. But I really feel like, again, I really just feel like every time that maybe the show had even a remotely interesting direction to go in, it just went in the opposite direction, or just like the least interesting direction, and then just that it was just very inconsistent throughout. Um, yeah, all the things we talked about before. So I'm gonna go with a 2 out of 5. What about you, Miranda?
A 2.
Maybe I should make it a 2.5. You seem to like it a lot less than I did, and I
It's okay. There's nothing star-studded about it. Like, there's it's just a television show.
that's fair.
Like, there's, like, some things that I've watched and I just absolutely love. But most things are just a television like, it's okay. It's medium. Like, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, fantastic show, 5 out of 5. But, like, this is like a 2, or it's better than some of the seasons of Flash or Arrow and stuff. So, like, it's better than the CW garbage, but it's not as good as my favorite TV shows.
Well, to be fair, it's not hard to be better than CWTC.
I guess that's true. So, yes, so that's why there's a 2, because it's a medium television show.
All right. I definitely feel like I'm the one that I don't want to say liked it the most, but I feel like I'm the one that had the least amount of problems with the show. Don't get me wrong, I still had issues with it, but like I said at the beginning of my brief thoughts, I thought this show was adequate. It's okay. It's not awful, but it's not great either. And like Udi, when you were explaining your rating, I think you said like a 2.5 is like like okay for you, like that rating means something is just okay. To me, a 3-star rating is just okay, because if you like, a 2.5 to me is below average still, so like a 3 out of 5 is just okay, and that's what I'm going to give this show. I'm going to give it a 3 because I thought it was okay, and stuff that I usually think is just all right, I usually just, or I think is in the middle, I'll give it 3, so I'm going to give it a 3.
I do usually agree with you, but like mathematically 2.5 is half of 5. So, in that regard is why like I'm like 50-50 on it. So, 2.5. But in general, I agree that usually if I like thought something was pretty okay, but not like great in any way, I'll give it a 3 as well. But just to confirm, I did switch my score to a 2.5 for sure. Like I'm gonna stick with that just because I was already teetering on it, and if Miranda's at a 2 with it, I feel like she liked it a lot less than I did. So I'm gonna go up 0.5.
So that means Udi, you have a 2.5, Dan is 3, I have 2. Our average total is 2.5.
We did not like this show.
Clearly. Which I feel like might be a first where we're all like, yeah, nah, this really is not the jam. On a kaiju movie at least. But that is our score, and that's the one we're going with. So thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about Monarch: A Legacy of Monsters. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our previous episodes, and as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizard.